Um, let's talk about your work in particular. Could you talk about some of the challenges of the piano in particular as an instrument, and also some of the rewards?
The challenges of the instrument. Okay. First of all, you practice it alone, and I think that that can be it can be frustrating, or it can be lonely, it can be challenging. It can be hard to have a sense of your own progress because and it can be demotivating. I think that in in today's world there are so many interesting things to do, things to watch, things to look at, people to text, and communities to be part of. And so to sequester yourself away on a consistent basis to sit and practice your instrument and then perform all by yourself is a challenge of the instrument. I think also it's a lot of pressure to perform on stage by yourself. And the piano, obviously, you can play chamber music, you can play collaboratively with other people, you can improvise, play jazz. But the 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 thing is that when you read music, there are a lot of notes and things happening. So it takes a lot of practice and time to get very good at sight reading and learning music quickly so that you can really enjoy playing with other people. We don't have piano orchestras in the same way. I mean, they
Right.
do monster concerts for children where everybody has their own instruments, but really it's not a common thing to have 10, 20 pianos on stage and then like play a concert. That's more of a novelty kind of thing. So that's the first thing, is the fact that there's not, it's a kind of a solitary, it can be a solitary thing. And so you have to find ways to connect with other people. Another thing about the piano that's a challenge is the fact that it is multiple voices, but always the same timbre,
Hmm.
really. It's one instrument. And so, for example, if I have a student playing a concerto in the concerto competition, and then they have a second piano as the accompaniment, it's harder for the judges, even if they know the piece really, really well, to tease apart who's playing the orchestra part and who's playing the solo part, right? And it's just because the piano is such, all the it's a piano no matter which notes we can have different dynamics, we can have different color, we can certainly create contrast within it, but it's not the same as a string quartet or an orchestra, wind symphony, even a choir. You have differentiations in color that are difficult. So I would say those are two of the main um, challenges about the piano.
Well, what would you say the rewards are then for somebody that's like, I'm not playing that then?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, one of the rewards is kind of the flip side of the first thing I said about the challenge, is that you can play the piano by yourself and play the complete piece. I currently have a student who's learning pictures at an exhibition, which I played the viola part of in the Ravel arrangement of, which is a magnificent arrangement, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, and this person is playing the solo version, the original Mussorgsky version, and he can play all of it, like
Right.
because it's only written for piano. And so he's not practicing the way I was, like da 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 da, like single note, knowing that it's going to be part of a whole later on. So in that sense, you're much more self-sufficient. Also, the piano is a very versatile instrument because you can, well, as you know, as a jazz musician, you play chords, you play melody. There's just so much you can do with it. It has a huge range, right? And it's like super fun. I mean, it's just fun, and you set some kind of challenge for yourself, and then you practice, and then you get better at it, and it's like you can do a thing that you couldn't do a few days previously, and it's just like wow, and you can play for people, and they're like, they hear the whole piece, right? It's not like, okay, this is the second violin part of this Beethoven string quartet I've been practicing really, really hard, or an excerpt or something that's just a little piece of it that you're working on for an audition or something. I'm not saying that the piano is a superior instrument to everything else. But those are a couple of the rewards of playing the piano.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I teach a lot of little kids and beginners. So I want to talk to you now as a college professor teaching piano. I am able to, I basically see, while every one of my students is different, I do see types of students who come
Mm.
to me and I have to deal with them. And they can churn from one type to another in the course of their studies. So it's not like they're a type of person. It's more like what type of student are they now? For instance, I talk about this on our YouTube channel. The three categories I like to say, I have the gifted student, the troubled student, and the normal student. So it may be a little different for you in college, but do you see types of students who come to you?
I hadn't really thought about it that way. I I can see how you would, especially working with the number of students you do. I can see how you would kind of um, kind of see these categories. I think for me, I have noticed that there are some students who have this kind of natural ability to get around the instrument really well, but they don't take instruction well, and they're resistant to making any changes.
Mhm.
And so things come pretty easily to them, but I would say they're not very teachable, right? They
Yeah.
don't really want to, they're not curious and don't necessarily want to have somebody give them feedback that's going to challenge them. And then there's another type of student that I have come across, which is the kind of person who maybe doesn't have as strong of a foundation. They might struggle to get around the instrument. They might struggle to play certain things that the other student that I just described would be able to easily play. But they are hungry. They are so eager to learn. They just want to get better. They want to improve. They're passionate about learning. And so I can tell you that if I have the choice between somebody who's playing at what might objectively sound like a higher level but isn't open to learning versus somebody who still has a further to go, who is eager to learn, I would always much rather have the person who's just eager to learn, because it's enjoyable, and it's gratifying, and then they're bringing so much to the learning experience. Because in piano lessons at the university level, you have to bring, like, it all depends on what you bring in, right? I'm
Mhm.
not teaching somebody like note learning, right? I'm teaching them how to refine things, how to improve their technique. And if you're not interested in that, then there's not a lot I can do to, to cause you, to force you to be interested. So I would say those two types. And then I have noticed that some of my students really respond well if I demonstrate, and other students don't respond well if I demonstrate. They need to, um, so they don't need to see it or hear it. They need to try it themselves, or they need to hear it described to them. And so, kind of learning about how different people process information is also interesting. I have a colleague, a wonderful colleague at Interlochen, who teaches at USC, and his name is Stephen Pierce, and he is really interested in the Enneagram. Do you know what the Enneagram is,
Yes, I
Adam?
do.
Yeah.
But
And
I'll
so,
let you tell us what it is because I
well,
want you.
Enneagram there are 9 types, and you can take a little quiz, and it tells you what number you are, 1 through 9. And then and what he does is he has students take the Enneagram test, and then he learns what number they are, and then that affects how he approaches them.
Mhm.
He knows, like, oh, that person's a 2, so I have to kind of, go at it this way. And oh, that person's a 7, so they won't really respond as well to that, so I'm going to do it this way. And I think that that's really the key, is really figuring out like where your students are coming from, so that you can kind of, so that what you have to say is going to
Hit them
fill
the
in.
best.
Yeah.
Right. The efficiency in your teaching, so you're not demonstrating to someone who doesn't need to be demonstrated to,
Right.
essentially.
And I'm not a big demonstrator. I don't really, that's not my preferred way of teaching. I don't prefer to just like play it and then have them play it back. But there are some students I've noticed that respond really, really well to that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. That's what we're doing here. Yeah. Okay. I'll do some of that. Yeah.
Sometimes you just need to show them.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah. I'm very curious because I don't get to talk. I get to talk to my old professors occasionally, but generally I don't get to talk to too many piano professors. How do you look at piano teachers like me? Am I the enemy or am I a collaborator? Because I can easily see, you get a student from and you just got to fix this and you got to fix that. So what's your thought on that?
Oh, I feel like there are so many. I mean, piano pedagogy is training amazing teachers. And I think that we have such amazing pre-college teachers and child teachers of children. I think that your job, Adam, is so important because you're setting people up with these fundamentals that will stay with them. I mean, I don't teach children anymore. I have in the past, but I feel like it's kind of an area of specialization that I'm not an expert in it. And I don't want, given what I do, what I spend my days doing, I don't want the responsibility of like setting up a child, and then having them then learn on top of that. I think that, I mean, I start with the John Thompson method. Do you know the John Thompson method?
Sure. It's a famous method. It's been around for years.
It's the middle C method, right? And so I learned notes, intervals, all that stuff. But I mean, I didn't learn the concept of any music theory until I was in college. I didn't learn tonic, dominant. I didn't understand what an interval was. I didn't do, none of that. But now that's normal. That's normal for children. And it's awesome. It's great. And the improvising, as we talked about, is super, is great. It's liberating, right? You don't feel like you're just confined to like, okay, I gotta recreate these notes, because it's an instrument. It's like you have to just say things. Sometimes there's notes and sometimes it's improvised. Sometimes you're making it up. So no, I don't see you as the enemy. I see you as having this, you're educating the future musicians, people who are not only going to go on and be professional musicians, but they'll be musicians, people who enjoy music, people who do it recreationally, people who go on in life, they become an engineer and they're like, oh, I used to take piano lessons. I quit when I was 13. I wish I'd never done that, but I learned so much, right? And then my kid has to take piano lessons so that I can pass that on, right? So there's a lot that you're doing, and I'm grateful to all of the people who teach and prepare people for college music study.
Well, of course, there is, as you said, lots of great pedagogy, and there's lots of organizations to help you improve your teaching. Even so, we have an opportunity here. What would you like me to know as a piano teacher of young people so that when they get to you, you don't have to fix so much? What would you like me to do?
Well, you're probably already doing everything I want you to do, but
even so, pretend I'm not. Pretend I'm not perfect because.
Well, I would say, I would say that you want to make sure that there's a good natural physicality at the instrument, and so like really teaching the drop and release. You teach two note slurs this way. Drop and release, drop and release. Teaching that, teaching rotation at an early age, teaching like technical fundamentals, like scales, arpeggio, all those exercises, starting with 5-finger patterns and then moving on, and then not stopping. A lot of times people teach the scales or whatever, and then they're like, okay, we're done, and it's like, no, you've only started. This is the beginning. You're laying the foundation, right? And then at the same time, I think teaching children to make things up, I really love it when I get students at the college who also compose, who also improvise, who don't come with the inhibitions that I had, of just like, oh, okay, well, this is what I'm allowed to do, and everything else is kind of, off limits. So teaching young people to have a kind of freedom. The other thing I think I would like you to teach, which you probably again already are, is the power of concentration and hard work, and the fact that when you are learning something, there's a certain discomfort that often comes with that, and that discomfort means you're learning.
Mhm.
And so that you can kind of start to learn to take pleasure in that discomfort because you know where that is leading, right? It's leading
Yeah.
to you being able to do something you couldn't do before. And so teaching students how to kind of push through some of that discomfort that comes with learning, and persist and find that internal motivation, the intrinsic motivation that comes from the satisfaction of pushing through and playing.
That's a really fascinating and unexpected answer, but I totally agree. And it is one of the things I particularly love to teach my students, how to find that middle place between it's too hard and it's too easy, so that you can live in that place of just getting there, and you keep growing. But it begs the question, because we were talking about the brilliant student who I have sometimes and who you have sometimes. And a lot of times there are some students who are so brilliant that they really never ever have to work until they get to you. And then when they get to you, they still don't want to do it. If it's going to cause them that discomfort, they've been able to avoid that discomfort their whole life because they've been lucky, really unlucky, but they've been lucky. Are you able to engage with that student in the way that you just described to me and bring them into a place where they are comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Well, usually, I mean, it's by the time you're at that kind of situation, it is very individual. So it's very hard for me to like make a generalization. But I can tell you that it's really about finding, I think, it's about finding, helping that student figure out what's motivating them to play. Because a lot of times students in that situation are just playing the piano because they're like they have a knack for it, or they're good at it, they've always done it. And so the resistance to learning comes from not wanting to bother because they've never had to make that effort before, right? um, and that said, I mean, I have students who they've practiced really hard, but maybe it's a certain type of practice, maybe it's a very mechanical practice, and then the process of like really listening to the sound or thinking about phrasing or certain aspects of playing the piano that are a little bit more refined, that are challenging, that are also not black or white, right? It's easy to say move your hand this way, or it's easy to say get louder on this note, but it's much harder to 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 kind of feel something. And if that's not part of your vocabulary, that is a challenge, right? And so it's about trying to connect with the motivation, like why is that student playing the piano, what do they want to do, and what do they think the music's about, right? And so there's a lot of those kinds of students. I tend to ask a lot of questions, so we're playing, and they might play something. I'll say, okay, well, what do you think is the character at the beginning? Where's this phrase going? What voice should be the loudest, and why? If this were an orchestra, what instrument would be playing this voice, right? And so you're starting to cultivate this urgency inside them to know some of these answers, because maybe they've never really thought about any of those answers. And then once they start to verbalize answers to those questions, they start to unlock some of those other things.
Yeah, and I want to take this just one step further, because
Okay.
this is the most fascinating thing in the world for me, to approach people at this place and help them go to the next level.
Hmm.
People who are very good at performing also tend to be very, very good at avoiding the questions that you're asking them. Or, they get very good at giving people the answers that they think they want, or somehow through some measure of aggression, either active or passive, avoiding having to answer the question. Oh, I have a headache and I can't answer.
Oh,
So there's lots of ways to
they don't say that
avoid,
to me.
right?
They don't say I have a headache. I don't want to answer. Well, so but anyway,
You understand what
I'm
I
very
mean? I
aware.
mean, I'm sure you've run into this kind of resistance to I'm asking you to stop telling me what I want to hear. I'm asking for you to grow, because if you don't, there's no future for you. You think you're going to be fine, or maybe you really need to ask, do you want to be playing at all? And that is the most terrifying question for somebody at the level that you're teaching.
Well, I feel like I teach undergraduate and I teach master's students, and so um, I can only think of one case in 18 years where I was like, "Do you even want to be playing the piano?" And so, I mean, people are pretty motivated by the time they're here. That I don't have to like, okay, now, you know. But I hear what you're saying, because sometimes if I say, "What's the character here?" they might say, "Well, it's loud," or they might say, "It's in G major," you know. And so then you have to kind of be like, okay, well, if this were a movie and this were the soundtrack to the movie, what would be happening in the movie? Is it night or is it day? Are there a lot of people there, or is it just one single person? Is it raining? Is it sunny? Is it um what season is it? And you can elicit that, and they don't know what the right answer is, right? They're not
Right.
trying to read your mind. I just want to know. I want to know, like, is it the city or is it the country? Is it? And then you can kind of start to get into um, what they perceive. And then from there, you can say, well, okay, so we're in the city, it's the night, you're alone. There's rain outside pouring down the pane, right? And we're about, there's this piece. So, what in the music makes you think of that scene? you know is it the fact that both hands start in just single notes with no harmonies, it's just octaves apart, right? Like the beginning of the Schubert big A minor sonata that starts, and um is it because the composer wrote pianissimo at the beginning and there's very slow harmonic rhythm over the first 16 bars? Is it because there's like, does it feel kind of excited, like there's this anticipation because there's a syncopation in it? Like, what is it that the composer put in the music that makes you feel these things? Because this is your role as interpreter, to activate these feelings in the listener, right? To kind of find those things in the music, to bring them out, to interpret them, so that then when the listener hears it, they're like, wow, I feel like kind of lonely, and I'm looking out into the dark. Like, they don't have to have the same picture, but that feeling that you have. So does that answer your question?
Oh, very well. Thank you. I mean, it sounds like you're persistent, and perhaps I should even use the word kind as you bring them to this place, so that it's not a threat to them as you ask these questions, but you're engaging them in a way that is pleasant and maybe a little confounding, but not disorienting.
Well, I just think that times when teachers weren't kind to me were not times when I learned the best.
Hmm.
And I also know that, yeah, that tends to, I think, make people shut down. And at the end of the day, like, I mean, the learning, I can't learn for a student. Right? I can't learn the music for a student. I can't like learn the ideas. And so at the end of the day, it really is their own responsibility. So that's why, I'm not like me. I try not to be mean about it, because I know everybody's there. They want to do well. They just want to want help, you know, to get there. And so I try to shepherd people as best I can.
Yeah. Well, you've increased your Shepherd's Crook reach by starting a YouTube channel. And I want to talk about, first of all, why, and then let's talk more about what you're trying to do on that channel.
Well, I had a few reasons for starting my YouTube channel, and I actually made an introductory video where I talk about some of those reasons. I can tell you that I feel like there's a kind of urgency and an imperative as a university professor to be present in the online space, because there are a lot of people there, and for us to be absent, I feel a little bit, I think what I'm saying is that university professors, we tend to be a little bit behind a paywall, right? You have to come to a university in order to study with a particular professor. It's been that way like always until very recently. And so being able to expand past that and expand my reach and to reach students that I would never normally be able to impact is hugely meaningful to me. And I feel like it's important in order, like to our profession, I think it's important to make sure that the people who are teaching actually are professionals teaching, and then we're not leaving that space to people who might not have the background or expertise to be as knowledgeable. And also because I feel like it's a matter of remaining relevant, remaining culturally relevant. And if the only way to really study, like to learn, of course you have to, like, it's important to learn piano one-on-one, and if I make a YouTube video, I don't feel like that substitutes for individual lessons. But if the only way you can really have access to a university professor is by actually literally attending the university where that person teaches, then I feel like that is a path over time, over the next, 20, 30 years, towards cultural irrelevance, right? We need to be where the people are.
Yeah, this is great. I am one of those people who really can't. I mean, I have studied with university professors, thank the Lord, and it made a big difference to me, but not for long enough to give me what I was looking for. And now I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I'm busy, and my life is full. But because of your videos, I am able to get the quality of study that I'm looking for. And even more, I'd like to share something with you that I like. I'm a bit, what's the word, insecure about my piano technique. I haven't had the foundation that I would have liked. And it's improved over the years, but the best thing that I've discovered recently is watching your videos. I see myself and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm already doing that. Oh, okay, when I succeed, I'm already doing that. That's great. It's reassuring to me in some cases to say, yes, I should teach that to my students because I'm doing that well, and you've just articulated what it is.
Yeah, it can be validating, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
good.
important. Yeah.
That's great. Good.
Well,
I'm glad to hear that.
so let's say people want to check out your channel and also want to learn more about you. How can they find you?
Well, probably the best way is through my YouTube channel, which is the Piano Prof TV is the official. It's the Piano Prof TV on YouTube, and I try to upload a video there every Tuesday, and yeah, so that's the best way to find me. I also have a blog that I'm less good about keeping updated, and I'm also on Instagram, so you can also find me on Instagram at Kate Boyd Pianist.
And you have a website.
I have a website, kateboyd.com. Yes.
Yes,
right.
with performances as well.
Right. The pianoprof.com is for the teaching, and my website is kateboyd.com. Right. That's a more static site, but they can find me there too. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Kate Boyd, thank you, first of all, for serving as a bright star in my life as a pianist, something I could always look back to. I appreciate that. And thank you for being generous enough to meet with me so many years later to talk about who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly been a pleasure. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much. And thank you, audience, as always, for tuning in. If you are a pianist and you have a question for Dr. Boyd, you're welcome to leave it in our comments. We hope you'll like this video and subscribe. There is more coming. And if you're a piano professor and you want your say, please contact me. I would love to talk to you. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.